This is the newsroom for today, Thursday, December 3, 2020. We're broadcasting to you on E1, Scar TV, NTN, and Thursday TV in Partika. In the headlines, the outgoing High Commissioner to Guyana, Lilian Chatterjee, reflects on her legacy during the 5-month-long elections here and says she wouldn't change a thing.
Well, I wouldn't change a thing, for one thing. But more importantly, I think what surprised me was that I actually worked very well with the APNU government and with President Granger and his cabinet.
Bandits invade the house of a poor joint businessman and cart off $1.4 million in cash. Former Chief of Staff of the Guyana Defence Force, Gary Best, walks free of causing the death of national cyclist Jude Bentley. And a study finds that the LGBTQ Guyanese suffered job losses, family violence, and mental distress during the COVID-19 pandemic. A Linden mother of 3 is among 18 minibus drivers who were awarded for their professionalism. And in sport, National Training Facility could be used as a training bubble for national footballers, and New Zealand take first-day honours against West Indies. With the news, I'm Avinash Ramzan. Thanks for joining us. We started by telling you that her final months in Guyana were spent enduring a 5-month-long protracted elections period, which she received backlash over public pronouncements in representing the views of the Canadian government. But as Lilian Chatterjee packs up to leave Guyana within a week's time, she reflects on her almost 3.5 years' duties here as the Canadian High Commissioner and says she won't change a thing. For the first time publicly, she responds to allegations that she stormed the Guyana Elections Commission Command Centre on Hatfield Street, Georgetown, days after the March 2 elections. She told the newsroom's Kurt Campbell that the criticisms leveled against her were surprising, but dismissed them as merely propaganda.
Well, I wouldn't change a thing, for one thing. But more importantly, I think what surprised me was that I actually worked very well with the APNU government and with President Granger and his cabinet. Had very good relations. In fact, most of my time was with his government. He was very gracious to me, and his cabinet was very gracious with me. We worked very well. So I was quite unprepared for the kind of backlash that I received because I was not taking any political sides. I said last year at my Canada Day speech that President Granger was at about respecting the will of the people. And so I've been very consistent in my announcements, my public announcements, and what I advocated for was that the will of the people should be respected. Had APNU won, Canada would have recognized an APNU government, just like we had recognized his administration in 2015. There was a transition period, a change of administration. We worked with the PPP before that. We worked with APNU. Now we work again with the PPP. And we will work with whichever government is democratically elected. So Canada does not take sides politically. What we spoke up for was free and fair elections, and I stand by that. I never stormed any building or door. I think they said I kicked down a door, and I don't have the strength to kick down any doors. That was just pure propaganda. And in fact, at the time that they said I had done that, I was actually with my colleagues, the US, UK, and EU, and myself. We were, at the time that they said I was doing that, we were meeting with President Granger. We had our appointment with him was at 5 o'clock that day, and in the evening. And after we met with the president, we, as a group, we went away. We worked on a joint statement, which we put out that night. So we never went back to Ashman's when they alleged whatever they alleged I had done. Some people would say the legacy is that we spoke up for respecting the will of the people. I just consider that my job. I am humbled by people who think I've done a great job. I was just representing the views of my government. I actually have a lot more admiration for the Guyanese who spoke up. Much braver for a Guyanese to speak up for democracy than a foreign diplomat. I would like to think that another one of my legacies is going to be the Canada-Guyana Chamber of Commerce.
I have to ask for clarity. Is your reassignment linked to your involvement in the elections?
No, no. In fact, no, it's normally a 3-year assignment.
Correct.
So the fact that I'd gone over the 3-year period was really due to COVID, that there were delays in the reassignment process. It was not linked to politics.
We tell you now that a Swan Street Port Joint West Coast Demerara family remains traumatized after 3 masked men armed with a handgun, a knife and a cutlass invaded their home on Monday last. Akat Ali, aged 53, a businessman, along with his 2 elderly parents were robbed of $1.4 million in cash and a cell phone. Ali owns and operates a variety store while his parents are pensioners. The family's security cameras managed to capture one of the suspects breaking into the house through the window. The cameras also captured when Ali's older brother, who was sitting by the gate at the front of the house, was dragged inside.
We had a robbery Monday by 30. The guys get entry about 8:30 into the home.
Do you live alone or you have a family?
No. Me, my brother, my mom, my father. They came, they had a gun, knife, cutlass. When they get entry, first thing they asked the money, gold. I didn't have gold because all of my get robbed before and all my gold was, taken away. They get cash. They took my cell phone.
How much cash?
A total about 1.4.
1.4 million?
Yeah. No, well, some of the money was mine and some was my mom. Like, they usually collect their pension, right?
Okay, your mom is a pensioner.
Right. Both of them, mom and dad is pension, so they got their money separate. What a nice if you don't get what you want, you can take some shit with my mother, throat. Or slit her throat. You get all these threats, you gotta comply because you could never know, Oh, that was my brother. My brother was outside, sitting down by the gate, and one of the guys rushed at him and pulled him and dragged him back into the home.
Okay.
I was inside the shop. My mom and father was inside the kitchen. He was the only one outside. So they had to get him back into the home so, nobody make no noise or nobody would see anything. Yeah, everybody okay, but it was a little traumatized and, you tend to, get a little frustrated, a little shaky.
This is the second time that bandits invaded Ali's house. 3 bandits robbed the household in August 2019 and carted off with about $400,000 in jewelry and cellular phones. No one was arrested or charged for the first robbery. Now, the former Chief of Staff of the Guyana Defence Force, Rear Admiral retired Gary Best, walked out of the Georgetown Magistrates Court a free man on Thursday after Magistrate Rondell Weaver upheld a no-case submission made by Defence Attorney Nigel Hughes. The magistrate dismissed the charge of causing death by dangerous driving. 61-year-old Best of Sparrendam, East Coast Demerara, had pleaded not guilty to the charge, which alleged that on February 8, 2020, at Clive Lloyd Drive, Georgetown, he drove motor vehicle PRR 8182 in a dangerous manner, which resulted in the death of national cyclist Jude Bentley. Best was out on $500,000 bail during trial. Last month, Hughes made a no-case submission calling for the charge to be dismissed against his client on the grounds that the prosecution failed to prove key elements of the case. When the case was called on Thursday afternoon, Magistrate Weaver upheld the no-case submission on the grounds that the prosecution lacked sufficient evidence. The magistrate said that the prosecutor failed to establish that Best was driving dangerously, which led to the death of Bentley. Best is, however, before the city magistrate, Clive Nurse, for the offence of driving under the influence of alcohol. The 41-year-old national cyclist was killed on the Rupert Craig Highway while training. He was struck down by a Land Cruiser driven by Best. Best was found to be way above the alcohol limit at the time of the accident. Now, the government of Guyana has begun discussions to build a world-class oil and gas institute to train persons for the expanding petroleum sector. This was revealed by President Irfan Ali during his feature address at the 25th Annual Awards Ceremony of the Guyana Manufacturing and Services Association on Wednesday afternoon. The President noted that of utmost importance in the years ahead will be the nation's ability to service the needs of the new economy.
I assure you that we have commenced discussion on having a world-class, world-rated oil and gas institute and training center right here in Guyana, and we will achieve it. We must achieve it. This will not only provide training for Guyanese, but for human resources in the oil and gas sector from across the region. Guyana's economy is expected to register and sustain expansion over the next 10 years. But above all of this will be our ability to service the needs of the new economy, will be our ability to have the right mix of human resources, human potential to fuel the growth and development that will take place.
The Ministry of Health on Thursday recorded 79 new COVID-19 cases from 304 tests, taking the overall number of confirmed cases to 5,528. 34 of the new cases were recorded in Region 4 and 20 were recorded in Region 7. Region 10 recorded 11 new cases, while Region 9 recorded 5. Regions 1 and 6 each recorded 1 new case, and Region 3 recorded 3 new cases. There were 710 patients in home isolation, 43 in institutional isolation, and 4 patients in the COVID-19 intensive care unit at the Infectious Disease Hospital at Liliendal. An additional 31 persons who came into contact with positive patients are in institutional quarantine. To date, 151 persons have died and 4,618 have recovered. When the newsroom returns, a study finds that the LGBTQ Guyanese suffered job losses, family violence, and mental distress during the COVID-19 pandemic, and the GMSA awards 4 diplomats for their efforts in ensuring that democracy was maintained during the March polls. This is the newsroom. The lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender Guyanese were hit hard by the onset of COVID-19 pandemic, suffering job losses, family violence, and mental distress, a study has found. With no national statistics on the socio-economic impact of the pandemic on locals, a 4-country regional survey found that job losses for LGBTQ Guyanese ranked well over 50%. Kurt Campbell reports.
The Society Against Sexual Orientation Discrimination, SASA, is reporting that the 4-country survey done in May and June of 2020 found that Guyanese lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender LGBTQ persons suffered a high percentage of job losses. Managing Director of SASA, Joel Simpson, explained that while there are no national statistics for the socio-economic impact of COVID-19 in Guyana, the study, which was also done in Barbados, Grenada, and St. Lucia, found that 70% of Guyanese LGBTQ persons lost their jobs or had significantly reduced working hours. He admitted that the figure is high, but noted that it is not surprising and quite logical that this may also be higher than the national average. Simpson said LGBTQ persons work largely in informal sectors.
What we found in May, June when we did the survey, and this would have been just a couple of 3 or 4 months after the pandemic was declared in Guyana around mid-March, if I recall correctly. What we found is a couple of very important things. 70% of LGBTQ people had either lost their jobs or had significantly reduced working hours due to COVID-19. Now, 70% sounds high, and while there are no national statistics in relation to COVID-19 and its socio-economic effects in the country, I'm willing to bet that it's higher than the national average. And it's completely logical for me that LGBTQ people would be more affected because LGBTQ people tend to work in informal sectors.
Simpson was keen to point out that the survey was done roughly 4 months after the first COVID-19 death and case was recorded in Guyana. The SASA director said the livelihoods of LGBTQ persons were severely affected and many persons face stress and mental health issues due to the pandemic. Simpson said the increase in mental distress was brought on by loss of jobs, livelihood, and the restriction to stay at home and confront homophobia.
That put LGBTQ people, especially LGBTQ youth, in a position where they had to engage and deal with homophobic family members that they could have avoided outside of the pandemic, because they could come home late at night when everybody's sleeping. They could wake up either early and go to work, or wake up late after everybody goes to work, and they could avoid these homophobic family members as far as possible. But now everybody has to stay at home. There's stay-at-home orders. Well, there was a 2-week stay-at-home order. There were curfew measures, which are very early. I can remember, I think we had one at one point like 6 p.m. and all of that and so on. So people were now in a position where they couldn't avoid their homophobic parents, guardians, and siblings.
Simpson said another issue was the increase in family violence. This manifested in several ways, including physical, psychological, emotional, and economic. Simpson said this study was quantitative, where persons only responded to a questionnaire, but noted that a more qualitative study will be done on these matters, including how men who have sex with men, MSM, and transgender persons who are HIV positive were affected by the pandemic in accessing healthcare. Kurt Campbell, Newsroom.
At the end of 2019, Guyana recorded 104 HIV/AIDS-related deaths, according to statistics released by the National AIDS Program Secretariat, NAPS. There were also 807 new diagnosed cases recorded in 2019, of which 400 are males and 407 are females. The manager of NAPS, Dr. Rhonda Moore, during a virtual panel discussion in commemoration of World AIDS Day on Wednesday, said there are an estimated 8,700 persons living with HIV in Guyana. She said the age group mostly affected by HIV are 30 to 34 years, while the age group that are mostly presenting with AIDS are among 40 to 44 years bracket. Some 94% of the persons infected, or 8,133 HIV-positive Guyanese, are aware of their status. Another 73%, or 5,966, are on antiretroviral treatment, while 75%, or 4,461, have had their viral load suppressed. Now, Guyana is set to see major infrastructural developments over the next few years, and in order for young Guyanese to benefit and be part of these developments, the Minister of Public Works, Juan Edgel, is inviting the University of Guyana Faculty of Technology to engage the ministry. Edgel, during a recent interview with Newsroom, explained that young and competent civil engineer graduates from the university can assist with the country's development by being directly involved in infrastructural projects.
I invite the University of Guyana Faculty of Technology to engage with us for a discussion on this matter. Guyana's transformational developmental agenda requires that we have the competencies and skills, and we are pleased to engage our young, bright, competent Guyanese to aid and support this agenda. And I'm certain that with proper consultations and engagement, the needs of the Ministry of Public Works could be made known to the University of Guyana, and what the University of Guyana is offering could be made known to the Ministry of Public Works, and we can find some ground for an engagement to facilitate those young Guyanese.
The Ghana Manufacturing and Services Association, the GMSA, on Wednesday awarded 4 diplomats for their efforts in ensuring that democracy was maintained during the March 2020 general and regional elections and the period of uncertainty thereafter. Those awarded were the former British High Commissioner to Guyana, Greg Quinn, whose award was collected by the Acting High Commissioner, Ray Davidson, Canadian High Commissioner to Guyana, Lillian Chatterjee, the European Union Ambassador to Guyana, Fernando Pons Canto, and the U.S. Ambassador to Guyana, Sarah Ann Lynch, whose plaque was collected by the U.S. Charge d'Affaires. The diplomats were honored during the GMSA Annual Awards ceremony held at State House.
The post-election drama of 2020 is well known to all. It's a time when Guyana's democracy was under serious threat. During the many months of post-election turmoil, These 4 distinguished envoys played an important role during the March 2nd, 2020 general and regional elections in calling for adherence to democratic principles and rule of law in the aftermath of the polls. Tonight, the GMSA is recognizing these ambassadors for what they have done for Guyana.
The March 2, 2020 election was followed by 5 months of uncertainty after the counting of votes in Region 4, the largest voting district, was tampered with. During this period, which included a national vote recount, the United States, Canadian and British diplomats led the call for the restoration of democracy and for the president to be declared in accordance with the will of the people. Dr. Irfan Ali was declared president of the winner of the polls, on August 2, 2020 and sworn in on the same day at the Artichoke Conference Center. Still ahead on the newsroom, a Linden mother of 3 is among 18 minibus drivers who were awarded for their professionalism. Stay tuned. This is the newsroom. Donna Peters of Linden, Region 10, has been driving to support her 3 children for over 30 years. On Wednesday, she was among the 18 drivers who were recognized and awarded across the country for displaying professionalism on the job. In observance of National Road Safety Week, the Ministry of Home Affairs, in collaboration with the National Road Safety Council, held a Best Driver competition where over 100 minibus drivers participated from the 10 regions. Isnella Patwa reports.
As the lone female minibus driver to be awarded among 17 men, Donna Peters said after 30 years she still continues to transport school children in Linden, Region 10. Peters told the newsroom at the Best Minibus Driver Award ceremony held at the Artichoke Conference Center on Wednesday that it was her job as a minibus driver which helped her children to become a nurse, a teacher, and a mechanic.
And I'm proud doing my job from 6:30 in the morning to 6 in the evening. Well, I went into the business because at the time it was needed.
The Ministry of Home Affairs, in collaboration with the National Road Safety Council, held a Best Driver competition where over 100 minibus drivers participated from the 10 administrative regions. Minister of Home Affairs Robinson Ben delivered remarks at the ceremony and called on minibus drivers to make the change and reinvent the culture of minibus drivers. Minibus drivers are often stigmatized as reckless road users.
Of course, one of our criticisms in respect of minibus operators, the public transportation sector, is that errant minibus operators define the culture on the roads. And so we thought that we had to identify those minibus operators and drivers who are a great example for what proper road usage should be. And so that is why we are here, to recognize those individuals from the various road associations throughout the country, route associations, and to have these champions of proper road usage carry the message in their associations and throughout the country as to what we want each and every one of us to be.
The minister explained that recklessness on the roadways is not only fatal, but also lead to lifelong injuries, loss of income, and damage to vehicles. The other Best Driver winners include Dexter King from Region 1, Ricardo Chester from Region 2, Inderjeet Lachman from Region 3, Daniel Ramcharan from Region 4, John Carpen from Region 5, Caldit Pari from Region 6, Keith Blair from Region 7, Ian Gonzalez from Region 8, Thomas Hamilton from Region 9, and Leslie Jarvis from Region 10. The requirements for the competition included that their vehicle fitness was in order, along with driver's license and insurance. Reporting for the newsroom, I am Isana Lopato.
Last year, 34-year-old Lyndon Cave attempted to play trivia board games with his church's youth group, but it was criticized since the questions were all foreign. This was the light bulb moment for the father of 3, who then began his journey of making board games for Guyanese. Cave was working with the Guyana Sugar Corporation, but has now left that job to pursue his passion. The first game to be released to the public is called Real Number 1 Guyanese and includes questions ranging from the longest street in Guyana to the country's flourishing biodiversity. He plans to release a Creolese game in 2021. In his interview with the newsroom, Cave speaks of the many times he wanted to give up on his passion, but he's now setting up his own workshop at home.
Right, so I actually took over my church's youth group in February 2019. That's the World Vision New Testament Church of God in on Pier and David Street, Kitty. And trying to engage the young people, in different ways. Because, we're always, in society, we're always trying to make sure that we keep lines of communication open, because we know there's so many challenges that young people have today. So you try different ways to engage them. We came around to trying to play some board games. So I tried to get them to do something that was a bit more in-depth, other than playing Monopoly or playing the other things. I tried to go into a bit of history and whatnot. So we were looking at some trivia games. And so the complaint was that, we don't care about what happened in the US or Canada or, all these other places in the world. So why would we take time to know it? And, I guess that was the light bulb moment. I said, what if we had something that was local? Would you guys play? So of course we would try it. So once I came up with the name Real Number One Guyanese, that's where it all began. Because the objective of the game is to really encourage us to embrace our history. Guyana has very rich history. Our culture. It's you feel like in today's society, everybody's so attached to technology and the rest of it, we kind of lose our identity, so to speak, in all the things that we're doing. So for me, this game, the name Real Number One Guyanese is intentional in causing you to really try to refocus on who we are as Guyanese people. These are things that we started learning in school, but we haven't really had a channel, an avenue to have to remember them. So this game kind of causes you to, brush off the cobweb in the back of your mind, so to speak, and just go back to the things that you learned and just have fun with it. At this point, I have to be focused on basically getting the games into homes. As it is, the game is being locally manufactured. I actually set up a space in my home, I call it my little production space. So the plastic components, they're being 3D printed. So I have a few 3D printing machines. Of course, I have some more that I can't wait for them to get here so that we can ramp up production. And I'm really looking to, have 3D printing at a different level, because you can imagine the amount of copies that we're going to need to sell within our first year alone. The next game that we're about to release after we release Real Number One Guyanese, I know that one is going to be a hit as well, because persons have been saying, give us this one before the Real Number One Guyanese, because it's a Creolese game based on our Creolese language, which is something, again, I'm very passionate about. That one is called Yesu. So I won't say more on it. We'll talk about that at another time. But it's ready to go. We're just focusing on not putting all of them out at the same time. We have another one that is targeted more to nursery-age children, which I think is going to be well received as well. And naturally, there are other projects in the pipeline.
Anyone who wants to purchase the game can visit Azira Games on Facebook or Instagram, or call 624-0117. The cost for one game is $7,000 and will be delivered to your desired location. Now, Guyana joined the rest of the world on Thursday to observe International Day of Persons with Disabilities under the theme Building Back Better toward a disability-inclusive, accessible and sustainable post-COVID-19 world. In a statement to mark the day, the Guyana Council of Organizations for Persons with Disabilities urged for the allocation of a monthly disability grant as a living allowance. Newsroom on Thursday spoke with the visually impaired teacher at the Ministry of Education's Unit for the Blind, Rosemary Ramit, who also urged the authorities to improve accessibility to public and private buildings.
Definitely, and it's one of the areas too that I mentioned previously, which is accessibility, and this really has to do with enforcement of the building codes to make sure that buildings are accessible, and also the Central and Planning Housing Authority needs to do their part in ensuring that whenever they're approving new plans or renovations to buildings, that the area of accessibility is covered, because at the end of the day, when we exclude a section of our population from accessing buildings, which in turn will affect how they access goods and services, then really what we're doing is creating a disadvantage in terms of not only allowing people to access these services, but also businesses gaining from accessing these services. Because when you remove that economic gain that you would stand to gain, you are really putting yourself at a disadvantage. So it really goes both ways, and it really benefits both individuals. Well, the view I always take is that we need to have an inclusive approach. And simply what this means is that we create an environment where no individual feels as if their difference is something to be emphasized or something to be made quote unquote special, because there's really nothing special about having a difference or something that makes you different. And so of course, in terms of the government side of things, we do have our Persons with Disabilities Act 2010. And so one of the things that we're advocating for is the full implementation of the contents of that act, and also the implementation and creation of policies, inclusive policies, that will govern how not only education, but other services are delivered to persons with disabilities.
President Irfaan Ali on Wednesday challenged the private sector to be more aggressive in its fight to ensure local products can access markets in other CARICOM countries. The president, in his address at an event hosted by the Guyana Manufacturing and Services Association, said while the government has to do its part, the business sector must be bolder, that should be, in its regional engagements. Bibi Katoon reports.
Private sector organizations have repeatedly complained about Guyana's inability to export agriculture produce including honey, pineapple, pumpkin and coconut water to nations in the Caribbean community. But President Irfaan Ali on Wednesday said it is the business sector which needs to be bold in its fight to remove trade barriers which exist.
The engagement with CARICOM must be bold. It is time we break down the barriers to trade. It is time we stake our place, and whilst we have the capacity and will invest on food security, private sector needs to push hard on all the barriers that prevent our goods and services from entering a free market, a open market, a unified market in CARICOM.
The president was at the time addressing the 25th annual award ceremony of the Guyana Manufacturing and Services Association, GMSA, held at State House Compound, Georgetown.
This is not only a duty for the government, this is a responsibility for the private sector. The private sector and the Manufacturing Association must see themselves as integral. They have an integral role to play, an integral part to play, not a complaining role or a complaining part.
He noted that the private sector must be more proactive in going after opportunities, noting that in the last 3 months, the government has seen remarkable interest in various sectors from investors. In an earlier address to those gathered at the award ceremony, President of the GMSA, Sham Nokta, recognized the need for the private sector to be more competitive.
Mr. President, the GMSA has been pushing for a greater space for locally manufactured goods and services in national procurement. However, this also needs to happen sectorally, and in particular in oil and gas. We are assured by government's commitment on local content and look forward to having in place a robust local content framework at the earliest opportunity.
Nokta used the opportunity to also push for a greater space for locally manufactured services and goods in national procurement, noting that this should be extended to the oil and gas sector. With a new year on the horizon, he said the business sector is committed to working in partnership with the government as he outlined some areas for collaboration. He pointed to the National Development Strategy, Competitiveness Strategy, Poverty Reduction Strategy and the Low Carbon Development Strategy, noting that these were all prepared prior to oil discovery and Guyana becoming an oil producer. Therefore, they need to be updated. Bibi Katoon, Newsroom.
When the newsroom returns, the financial, weather and bridge reports along with sports. Welcome back to Newsroom. Now for a look at what's happening in sport. We're starting off with some football news. The Guyana Football Federation's national training facility at Providence could potentially be a bubble for national teams to encamp full-time and train ahead of international fixtures. This is according to the GFF president, Wayne Ford, who spoke to Akim Green.
Football is a contact sport, which due to the COVID-19 situation creates other complex issues, unlike the non-contact sports. There is a growing trend of having sportsmen and women in a biosecure environment, commonly called a bubble. Ford had told Newsroom Sport it is impossible for football to play in a bubble in Guyana. He was referring to competitive action. However, there is an option of using the facility at Providence to encamp players and all necessary support staff full-time and cut their access to the general public for the duration of training.
You are correct. With the dorms being fully furnished and functional, we can actually, if we need to, if we need to bring a team in, I don't think the facilities will be adequate for the senior men's national team. It would probably, we've designed it where we can safely do maybe U20 all the way down, but I don't think it will. But it may be a compromise we might have to make, because we may not be able to keep the national team in a hotel. The facilities there may be too costly and may not be practical, because a hotel is a fairly busy place as well. So we will have a facility where we can have our team in for whatever period we want to, and they will have everything that they need to prepare properly. They will have a really comfortable space to rest. We will have a really good staff in the facility to make sure that the meals are of a high standard, and of course they'll have the field there. The lights will go in very soon, so they'll be able to train day and night and really prepare for whatever tournament.
The initial curfew measures in Guyana caused the construction not to progress at the rate it was desired, but Ford indicated when it is completed, Guyana will have the best access to resources to prepare players.
The entire venue will take maybe another 1.5 to 2 years to be fully functional, fully completed. But what the investment that we're making now is to bring it to the level of a fully functional technical center. We have a pitch, we have dorms, we have gyms, we'll have the kitchen and the lighting. So we can now develop our national teams and we have made we've made significant investment in the technical equipment, which you will see and hear about in another couple of weeks, or maybe even sooner, as to how the sports science and what we're doing at the technical center will be improved dramatically. And those are all the strategic investments that we've made during this time. So our national team program, Akeem, is going to be very likely one of the best in the region in another couple of months.
The multi-million-dollar facility, which was commissioned in May 2019, has gradually seen significant improvement. The intention for the first 2 phases included the lights, stands, dorms, and washrooms. Other aspects of the facility will include dormitories, kitchen services, a gym, and a pool. For the Newsroom, Akim Green.
Cricket news now. Kane Williamson made smooth progress and Tom Latham was assured as New Zealand ended a dominant first day on 243 for 2, having been put into bat by Jason Holder on a pitch whose colour was indistinguishable from the outfield. The bowlers, particularly seamers, were expected to dominate, while the fans who came to the Seddon Park in Hamilton got to see a masterclass from their national captain. Let's take a look now at some highlights of the final session.
Runs, it's been a while. Off the bat anyway. But he just leant on that and it sped away for 4. Control that one much better. Maybe not as much bounce on it, but having soaked up a lot of pressure.
Cut away. And that's a single needed to bring up Test 50, number 33 for New Zealand's captain, Kane Williamson. It's cut away by Latham, short and wide from Chase. And the timing's good from Latham, he'll pick up 4, lovely shot. Worked off his hip fine and he'll get 4. Missed his line, did Gabriel, and Latham will pick up 4 more.
Bowled a decent spell.
Bowled him! Got it through! This time up and a little bit of movement back.
And the West Indies have finally broken through. Now, what was that off? Just the pad, or all the same, 185 for 2.
Slow enough to swing the ball. Oh, look at that, it's taken off through Dowrich again and will run away for 4 buys. John Campbell, I hope he's okay. Yeah, up and over the hoardings. Saw that steep bounce, just took off again.
Strong there. Needs no second invitation. Ross Taylor short and wide.
The Ghana Jaguars pair, Romario Shepherd and Raymond Reef, are outstanding for West Indies A, sparking a remarkable turnaround for the Caribbean side against New Zealand A on day 1 of their first unofficial 4-day test in Mount Maunganui. Reduced to 113 for 7, West Indies A were in danger of being skittled out cheaply, but the pair put together a brilliant partnership of 199 to turn the contest. West Indies eventually made 322. By stumps, New Zealand were 10 without loss, with Glenn Phillips not out on 8 and Tim Seifert on 2. Shepherd made a magnificent 133, his maiden first-class ton from 154 balls. His innings included 14 fours and 7 sixes. Reefer was more circumspect, his 65 spanning 162 balls and including 6 fours. Prior to this knock, Shepherd had 3 50s in first-class cricket, with the highest being 72. Earlier, West Indies lost opening pair Brandon King for 3 and Shane Mosley for 2 with just 13 runs on the board before Nicholas Pooran and skipper Rothman Powell added 66 for the 3rd wicket. Powell made 27, Kyle Mayers fell soon after without scoring, and Pooran, playing his first 4-day game since 2014, fell short of a 50, getting to 46 off 74 balls with 7 fours. Joshua De Silva and Fabian Allen were the other batsmen dismissed for 2 and 19 before Shepherd and Reefer joined forces to swing the momentum. Bowling for New Zealand A, Jacob Duffy picked up 4 for 47, Nathan Smith 3 for 37 and Doug Bracewell 2 for 62. And finally, 6th-round action in the Guyana Cricket Board's over 40 T20 competition, sponsored by Tropical Spring Water, was contested on Wednesday at venues in Demerara. Recording victories in latest play were West Demerara Mavericks, West Demerara Masters and Bel Air Rubis Ultratech. At Everest, West Demerara Mavericks defeated Sandpiper Masters by 34 runs after posting 103 for 6 in a game reduced to 13 overs per side. Munishwar Balgobin was the star performer for Mavericks with 56. Devendra Ramdihal claimed 3 for 22 as Sandpiper Masters were limited to 69 for 7. At Enmore, West Demerara Masters defeated Regal Masters by 5 wickets after being set a target of 120, and Bel Air Rubis Ultratech defeated RP Construction Legends by 5 wickets with the target being 88. 7th round action is slated for Saturday, December 5. At Everest, it will be KV Construction Masters versus West Demerara Masters from 9 hours 30 and Sandpiper Masters versus Everest Masters from 13 hours 45. At Enmore, Regal Masters will come up against RP Construction Legends from 9 hours 30 and West Demerara Mavericks will play Bel Air Rubis Ultratech from 13 hours 45. And with that, we've come to the end of the news for this evening. Of course, you can find updates on these and other stories on our website, Newsroom.gy, our Facebook page and Instagram. On behalf of the entire news team, my name is Avinash Ramzan. Thanks for watching. Be safe. See you next time.